It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
And welcome back to the program. Thank you so much. On this Johnny Cash Friday, Congressman Bruce Westerman won on Tuesday in the primary. He had a primary opponent. He got 79.89% of the vote. And so now he moves on. He gets the nomination for the Republican Party, and Bruce Westerman joins us now. He's on the phone. Congratulations, Congressman.
Thanks, Paul. Good to be with you this morning on your Johnny Cash Friday. I always enjoy that.
It is always a good one, yeah. And this is one of my favorite ones just because it really does take a lighthearted approach to how, we could make these political discussions super serious, but it's pretty funny how a whole band
takes
can
a little bit of mental gymnastics to follow the storyline.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And I love how even back in Johnny Cash's day, you have that one guy who just burns his driver's license. He's like, I don't want to be tracked. I don't need this. I don't need to stop at a red light. That's just the government trying to tell me to stop my car.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Big Brother's always been there, I guess.
Yeah, it really has. All right, so Congressman Westerman, since you've been in office in D.C., you've sponsored or co-sponsored 17 bills which have been signed into law, more than 80 bills which have passed the House. You got any favorites out of that resume?
Well, obviously the Resilient Federal Forest Act was probably the biggest bill that I've personally sponsored. That the most contentious one that got the most notoriety, I guess you'd say. I've passed that out of the House twice, and we've been able to get bits and pieces of that into different pieces of legislation. So there's a good difference being made out there. But when you look at the tax cut bill, and there's a lot of good things that we've been able to do in Congress, especially with this new administration, in getting bills signed into law. And this week was actually a big week where we had the changes to the Dodd-Frank bill that the President signed yesterday. This is something that we passed in the House months ago. We called it the Financial Choice Act. And there were regulations put in place under the Obama administration that were just playing havoc with community banks and small financial institutions. We were seeing them close one after the other all across the country, and Arkansas is no exemption. And these community banks play a vital role, especially in rural America. And the Obama administration had put the same heavy-handed regulatory burden on community banks that the Wall Street banks were facing. This stemmed from the financial crisis that was caused by the Wall Street banks, that the community banks had no part in, but boy, they were paying the price for it. And who ultimately pays the price for regulations like that are small businesses and consumers, who are the backbone of the economy. So I was very pleased to see us pass the bill out of the House that the Senate sent back and get that on the President's desk, get signed into law.
Yeah, that is that is good. The 90%. So I've got something in front of me that says the passage of the Dodd-Frank reform. 90% of the bill passed this week. So 90% of it. So do you know what the other 10% is that you guys hope to do in the future?
Yeah, and I think what that means is that of the bill that we passed out of the House, called the Financial Choice Act, which was, I think, more of the standard for what the legislation should have been, only 90%, or maybe I should say 90% of that was able to get through the Senate. And a lot of it was on the way that we provided off-ramps out of these regulatory burdens in the House. We had a pretty rapid off-ramp where the Senate had a more gradual off-ramp. We did some things like we eliminated the CFPB in the House version. The Senate just put some restraints on the CFPB. So our bill was much more aggressive, and but at the end of the day, somebody went through it and decided that about 90% of what we had in the House version made it through on the Senate version.
Okay. that is a good. I mean, that's a good explanation. We're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman. He is from District 4, just coming out of a massive primary win for him. Congressman, what else? Tell me about this. I saw this over on Fox News, the passage of a right to try for terminally ill patients. We're looking at the Fox News article right now. Tell us about this.
Yeah, and this was another big bill that goes to the president's desk. That all this happened on Tuesday. You know, the day of the primary election, I was in D.C. voting for these bills, but we got the financial reforms and this Right to Try Act passed that allows terminally ill patients to use experimental drugs if they choose to do so. The FDA had put barriers up that would prevent people from trying these experimental drugs, but I think people deserve that right to try those drugs if if the doctors have said there's nothing else we can do for you, but they know there's an experimental drug that hasn't made it through all the FDA trials yet. Mm-hmm. We gave patients that right to choose.
Wow. Did you guys have any pushback against that? I'm curious. I mean, because you would think this is just a basic concept. I mean, I wish you could. I mean, I wish people had more freedom to try this kind of stuff before they were, given a death sentence. Personally, I mean, I would go even further with it. But did you have any pushback from people? Go ahead.
I had a lot of pushback from Nancy Pelosi and her friends on the other side of the aisle. Saying that allowing somebody to take a drug that the FDA hasn't determined the effects of it is cruel. Those kinds of arguments. But if your option is you're going to die, or you could possibly try this drug, I would want the right to try the drug.
Yeah, and here's the thing. With these days, in this time, there are so many resources out there for people to do their own research. I mean, I was watching a podcast the other day where they were saying, there's this clinic down in Panama where they're having these amazing successes with this certain type of stem cell, and of course they're ethical stem cells. They're not embryonic. They're but yet we've got regulations here that are preventing that treatment from being done, in the United States. But down there, they're having these incredible results. And so I guess my point is, there's all this information out there that people can get with the internet to kind of make their own decisions. And so, why not? And of course, if you're terminally ill, you're not just going to go out and try any old drug. You're going to be like, okay, I think this is going to help me. And you're going to do the research. I think most people would say that's a reasonable expectation.
Right. Well, and there are snake oil salesmen out there too. So, that's one of the most atrocious things of somebody trying to take financial advantage of someone at a point like that in their life. But you're right as far as drugs that are experimental. That the bureaucracy in the FDA is unbelievable, and it takes years and years to get drugs through trials. And there's good and bad to that as well. But, I've got a friend whose wife had a disease, and there were treatments for it, but couldn't be done here in the U.S., and he actually, as a last resort, took her to China to get treatment. And she did survive longer from those treatments, but she could have had the treatment here in the U.S. had it been approved by the FDA.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's good. I think that anytime we're allowing people more choice, so when it comes to their health care, is a good thing. And so this is a step in the right direction. We're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman. And so, Congressman, what I want to know is, I was at the Craighead County Republican Lincoln Day dinner last Saturday, where your colleague, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, was in Arkansas. And
right.
Some people are saying that he is, he's the next Speaker of the House. There were reports this week, though, that, maybe there's some others being considered. Jim Jordan's name gets thrown around. So I guess I'm curious, well, what's the feeling? What do you think's going to happen?
Well, I think Kevin would definitely be the front runner if the election were to happen right now, but there's a lot to take place before that election happens, and November after the general election. The main thing I want to make sure of is that the next Speaker of the House isn't an old one named Nancy Pelosi. So that's priority number one, to make sure that we retain the majority, and she's not the new Speaker. But Kevin's the majority leader. He was in the Speaker's race briefly until Paul Ryan got pulled into it last time, and he backed out and has been a great supporter of Paul. He's from California, but he's from a part of California that I think we don't often realize is even in California anymore with most of the stuff that comes out of California. But he's from a rural area, from Bakersfield.
Yeah.
He tells me he's more redneck than most Arkansans are, and I give him a hard time about being a California surfer boy. But he's furthest thing from that. But you got the streets of Bakersfield out there. Some pretty strong country music legends came out of Bakersfield as well.
Yeah. Oh wow, interesting.
And
yeah.
I think like Roy Clark and wasn't Merle Haggard from Bakersfield?
Maybe. Yeah, some people want me to do Merle Haggard Mondays, and in addition to Johnny Cash Fridays. So tell me, Bruce, what do you think? You mentioned we got a Nancy Pelosi, right? I mean, I don't know if you saw the recent video of her. And she keeps kind of, having these moments that are really troublesome. Not from regardless of a political standpoint of view, like you're like, whoa, is something is she healthy? But this blue wave, okay, it's a blue wave. Blue wave's going to come, but then you got polling now in a generic ballot. They're now saying Republicans got a 6-point advantage now. That could change between now and November. What are the Republicans feeling? I mean, do you have any colleagues that have legitimate opposition that are worried?
Oh yeah, across the country, there's in all races, you have to take them serious. You can't, especially when you're at the the congressional level. I mean, these are big races with. I think a lot of people might get into congressional races not understanding the magnitude of what running one is like, and what can happen through the course of one. The amount of just paperwork and administrative work that's involved in running a big campaign and the organization behind it. So anything can happen in one of these races, and you have to take it serious. But I don't think it's near as much of a big blue wave as the national media would like to portray it is. And that goes back, if you look at generic ballots at this time before the election in previous midterms, we're actually, as Republicans, in pretty good shape compared to what we've been in the past. I think you're going to see a lot of there's so much vitriol up there about the president that in certain areas you're going to see a lot of Democrats come out and vote. So I think the biggest threat to the Republican majority is just the base going out and voting. So we've got to do a good job of getting our base motivated and getting Republicans and independents that typically swing Republican to the polls.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to definitely come out in November because I think they're going to want to definitely, make a statement. I mean, if you look at what has happened, and during the primary, the Republican primary for president, I was skeptical of Donald Trump. But if you look at the full body of work, I mean, it is a body of accomplishment. And you've got somebody that will actually work with Republicans in the House and the Senate when the Senate will actually work, and he's pushing good policy and he wants it on his desk. I mean, you can't deny that the economy is growing at a rapid rate. You can't deny that the jobless rates are low, even though we've got a lot of able-bodied adults who are on the sidelines that need to get back into the workforce. But the president's pushing policy to do that with the work requirements that he allowed for Medicaid recipients, and that we're pushing in the Farm Bill. So, and the foreign policy things that he's done, who would have thought that would be possible?
So
yeah, well, and I know the Korea thing's been put on hold, but I mean, I think that I think that is eventually going to happen. I really do. It's funny how the media and the Democrats are almost celebrating that the summit is potentially is postponed or is called off with North Korea, and it's like they're celebrating it. It's like, hang on, do you guys want this to work out, or are you just like the illegal immigration thing, Bruce? I mean, to my dismay, Trump gave the Democrats everything he wanted. He wanted border security, but was going to basically give amnesty to the DACA, and yet the Democrats said, wow, we'd rather them remain victims and you not get the credit so we can use them as political tools.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to what you're saying there, and even just look at where we are in relation to North Korea right now as opposed to where we were 6 months or 2 years ago. The situation is moving in the right direction. We got American citizens returned. He's met with the South Korean leader. There was a summit scheduled. I think it'll be scheduled again. The main reason of that is because of economic pressure being put on Korea because of foreign policy that this president's doing. So the ball is moving in the right direction. And look at where we are with Iran in respect to where we were when the previous administration basically gave them the green light to develop nuclear weapons. So there's a lot of good things happening on the foreign stage. I know traveling overseas, there's a new respect for the U.S. that I think was fading at one time. The president said that these NATO countries are going to have to start contributing their share to NATO, which is supposed to be 2% of their GDP going to defense. And, not long after he said that, everywhere I would go where there was a NATO country, within 10 minutes, somebody had laid a sheet of paper out showing how they were going to get to 2% of their GDP to remain in NATO. So things like that are happening all the time.
Yeah, that's good. He definitely wants a better deal for the United States globally. There's no question about that. Congressman Bruce Westerman, congratulations, sir. We'll do this again soon.
Yeah, good to talk to you, Paul.
All righty.
Have a great Memorial Day weekend.
You too. Happy Memorial Day, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
All righty. Folks, it's Johnny Cash Friday, Ragged Old Flag. Let's let Johnny take it away.